rise. Yeah. I know you're always by my side, never turning out your light. When I need you most, your stars will shine. When I'm out there in the darkest place, worn and tired, I can still see you illuminate all my skies. When it feels like I've fallen too far from you, baby. Radio Ansar.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Al-Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Petermarisburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday. Radio Al-Ansar, keeping you informed.
خدا نے مجھ کو دیا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ملا ہے جو بھی ملا، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، جہاں جہاں بھی گیا دل بچھانے لگے، جہاں جہاں بھی گیا لوگ دل بچھانے لگے، یہ ہے تیرا میرا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا، 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 یہ کامیابیاں شہرت قدم قدم پہ ملی، یہ کامیابیاں شہرت قدم قدم پہ ملی، نصیب ایسا ملا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، طواف میں نے کیا صحیح مربانی، طواف میں نے کیا صحیح مربانی، جو میں نے میرا کیا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے، تیری دعاؤں سے، ماں تیری دعاؤں سے تیری دعاؤں سے مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر میں دشمنوں سے بچا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے قسم ہے اس میں اجالے کا کچھ جمال نہیں قسم ہے اس میں اجالے کا کچھ جمال نہیں عروج اس کو ملا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of News in Focus live on Radio Al-Azhar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus Sacoor and I will be in your company for the next 2 hours. I'll be interviewing some of our guests shortly. Today, the date is the 9th of July, 2025, and equivalent to 14 Muharram, 1447 AH. Alhamdulillah, we've been through the month of Zilhajj. We're halfway into the month of Muharram. There were auspicious 10 days that we just passed. And time is moving very, very fast indeed. And we have to ensure that we spend our time correctly. I've got Mufti Muhammed Hamza Farooqui with me in the studio. Mufti Sahab, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran jazilan for having me tonight on your show.
I also have with me political analyst, the head of NICSA political commentator, Narend Ganesh Jr., because his dad is Narend Ganesh Sr. I remember him in the back in the days in council. Narend, good evening and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International.
Good evening, Yunus, and good evening to the listeners.
Mufti Sahab, I just want to refresh on a hadith when I was talking about time is flying so fast. And if I recap, and you, the expert in it, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam has indicated that when you're coming to the closer to the day of Qiyamah, time will move very fast, and the years will be like months, the months will be like weeks, the weeks will be like hours, and the hours will be like minutes. Perhaps you just want to briefly explain us the meaning of that hadith and in what context it was quoted, Mufti Sahab.
There are several reports of this nature in the collection of hadith by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one such narration by Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anh, that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that the day of Qiyamah will not come until time passes rapidly and very, very fast. السنة كالشهر والشهر كالأسبوع, that a year will be like a month, and a month will be like a week like a day, and a day like an hour, and an hour like the flare of a flame. So, of course, the authenticity of that hadith on its place, but the great lesson that we need to learn from these hadith is that as we come closer to Qiyamah, there will be what we say less barakah, less blessing in the time that we have in comparison to the previous days and the previous nations that were on this earth before. So in one way, of course, it is understood in context as a sign of Qiyamah, as a sign that we are inching closer to the day of Qiyamah and the end of times. And also at the same time, it is a great reminder for us to ensure that, every moment is spent in the best way possible, and it is utilized in a way that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in a way that is fruitful for us in our lives and the hereafter as well.
Just what crosses my mind, and I'm hoping that I'm quoting the hadiths correctly, or the ahadith correctly. A lot of people raise the question, and whilst we're on the subject of time, and the Surah Wal Asr talks about time and the importance, a lot of people express concern that how do we spend our time? And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam has taught the Ummah that the 24 hours you spend can be an act of ibadat if you spend it in accordance with his sunnah. For example, if you read your Isha Salah with Jamaat, and then you get up and read the Fajr with Jamaat, you get the sawab as though you in ibadat for the entire night. And likewise, in between each Salah, that is one area. And the other area is for 8 or 10 hours a day, one trades. And if you trade in accordance with the sunnah of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, then that becomes ibadat. Perhaps you just want to enumerate. So it's not difficult to spend your time daily correctly without really cramping your lifestyle. Mufti Sahab?
Yes, most definitely. I was listening recently to a senior scholar of hadith in Darul Uloom Zakaria, Mullah Sulaiman Choksi, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. He was giving a talk in Marlborough. So he gave a very beautiful prescription about how a person can make their time valuable. So he says in between two actions, for example, you're coming to the masjid for salah and then you're going back home. So between point A and point B, how are you spending that time? He said, ponder on that. How are you spending that time? I mean, yes, you are going to perform your salah. You are going to come back home. You are going to the office. You are going to do work. So that 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour or 2 hours of your travel time from point A to point B, make that valuable and make it count. For example, if a person is driving 5 minutes to the masjid for salah, he uses that 5 minutes in dhikrullah, in tilawat of Quran, in reciting salawat unto Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and trying to spend those small moments which in those actions that we would outwardly find or understand to be trivial or small. Meanwhile, if you add that up in a day, for example, if you read 10 times kalima while you're going to the masjid, and then 10 times when you're coming back home, that is 20 times per salah, and you're getting approximately a count of 100 tasbihat just coming and going to the masjid, besides the fact that every other aspect in a person's life is in accordance to the Quran and the Sunnah. And the greatest thing here to consider is that as a Muslim and as a believer, my time becomes valuable by ensuring that my intention is correct. If my intention is correct, then anything I do would automatically become fruitful for me on my book of deeds and my scale of deeds. A person that, like the example was given of, for example, going for trade and business, if he goes out in the market, he reads the dua when entering the market, the fourth kalima, etc., he's got thousands of rewards at that time. And together with that, his purpose is to serve his family and to ensure that he's fulfilling the rights of his family, etc. He's going to utilize part of his profits in serving humanity, in serving mankind, etc. So the greater and the better and the more sincere your intention in whatever deed you do, within the parameters of Sharia throughout the day, that will make your action valuable, and that will make your day valuable, and eventually your life valuable, and every moment of your life valuable. So we need to, of course, focus big time and with sincerity on our intentions and what we are doing certain things for. If our sincerity lies in, having the correct intention and doing the correct things at the correct time, that will make our every moment and every action valuable for ourselves and valuable in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Some very pertinent comments Mufti Saab made in the context of us talking about the speed of time, and between Muharram and now, how quickly the time is flowing, and also between Ramadan, Hajj and Muharram, the months that have flown, and it's in line with the hadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. What we're going to do is, the subject for this evening we're going to chat about is, we're going to talk about the allegations of corruptions in SAPS and also the service standards of SAPS. Then we're going to talk about global tensions from an Islamic perspective. Mufti Saab will enlighten us on some issues there. And then we're going to talk about the impact of tariff adjustments imposed by USA recently. We know those tariffs were suspended for 90 days. Now Trump has imposed 30% tariffs. There was a slight reaction, so we'll unpack that later in the show. The show is interactive, and we welcome your comments, which can be sent to us on the studio WhatsApp number 060-9041-1056. We'll take a short nasheed break, and inshallah after the break we'll continue with our discussions with our guest Narend, Ganesh, who will give us some information and insight into these allegations of corruption in SAPS and also other pertinent issues he's raised with the president recently. Let's take a break, inshallah.
How did the most powerful and wealthy Muslim countries become silent, even obedient, puppets of the very powers that harm Muslims the most? Let's break it down with historical facts, political strategy, and religious reflection. 1. The real game, power, not faith. Many Muslim governments, like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, are ruled by monarchs or military-backed regimes. Their main goal isn't Islam, it's staying in power. And to stay in power, they need protection from Western powers, especially the US, global trade deals, Western weapons and technology, silence from the West when they crush dissent at home, so they sacrifice their Muslim brothers to protect their palaces. 2. The colonial trap, still alive. After the fall of the Ottoman Caliphate in 1924, Western colonial powers divided the Muslim world into weak, controlled states. Britain and France drew fake borders, installed puppet kings and presidents. US later stepped in with the petrodollar system, trading oil in dollars, not dinar or gold. So if a Muslim country steps out of line, the West freezes their assets, crashes their economy, or bombs them. That's why Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, and others obey. They are trapped by the systems colonial powers built. By 3, oil and burn wealth mar weakness. You'd think oil made them strong, but it actually made them dependent. Saudi Arabia sells oil, but keeps most of its money in Western banks. UAE invests in Western real estate and companies. Their military depends on US weapons and maintenance. If they anger the West or Israel, the switch can be turned off instantly. So instead of standing for justice, they sell silence for security, media and fear propaganda. These regimes rule by fear, not freedom. They use state media to brainwash citizens into thinking, if we resist, we'll become like Syria or Iraq. They silence scholars who speak truth. Imams are paid to promote loyalty to the king, not to Allah. This makes the people passive and the leaders proud slaves. E5. The enemy is rebranded to stay close to America and Israel, these countries. Call Palestinian resistance groups terrorists. Blame Iran for everything. Stay silent on Zionist crimes, but loudly condemn anyone who protests in Mecca or Cairo. They flip the script. The oppressor is a partner, the oppressed is the problem. 6.
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust. This third term school holiday, experience 3 Haram and 2 Haram tours. Packages from just 30,000 Rand, all inclusive. Confirmed flights from Durban and Johannesburg. Premium accommodation near each Haram. Daily meals, guided tours and transfers, all covered.
With myself, Muhammad Ibrahim Sufi.
And yours truly, Sheikha Umaruman Sufi.
Call now on 082 557 8641. That's 082 557 8641. Brought to you by Globetrotters by Ghulam Malik.
Get ready to unleash your creativity. Join us for a fun-filled morning of art, laughter, and inspiration at our Sip and Paint event, Saturday, the 19th of July, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 207 West Road Conference Hall. A creative morning of painting and self-expression. Inspiring words from our guest speakers, Nadira Chipa, Shafinaz Hassan, and Zinat Ayub. Delicious lunch to be served. Don't miss out. Mark your calendars for July 19 and get ready to unleash your inner artist.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Kenfield Auto.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Ansar.
घर लौटाना जान देना कोई तुझसे सीख जा जाने आलम हो फिदा कर लिया नोश जिसने शहादत का जाम कर लिया नोश जिसने शहादत का जाम उस हुसैन इब्न हैदर पे लाखों सलाम उस हुसैन इब्न हैदर पे लाखों सलाम पर सलाम कहो हुसैन पर सलाम कहो हुसैन पर सलाम कहो हुसैन पर सलाम अस्सलाम या हुसैन अस्सलाम या हुसैन अस्सलाम या हुसैन जिसको धोखे से कूफे बुलाया गया और बुला करके नाहक सताया गया जिसको धोखे से कूफे बुलाया गया और बुला करके नाहक सताया गया जिसके बच्चों को प्यासा रुलाया गया जिसके बच्चों को प्यासा रुलाया गया जिसकी गर्दन पे खंजर चलाया गया उस हुसैन इब्न हैदर पे लाखों सलाम हुसैन पर सलाम कहो हुसैन पर सलाम मेरे हुसैन तुझे सलाम मेरे हुसैन तुझे सलाम अस्सलाम या हुसैन अस्सलाम या हुसैन अस्सलाम या हुसैन जिसका झूला फरिश्ते झुलाते रहे लोरियां दे के नूरी सुलाते रहे जिसका झूला फरिश्ते झुलाते रहे लोरियां दे के नूरी सुलाते रहे जिसको कांधों पे आका बिठाते रहे जिसको कांधों पे आका बिठाते रहे उस पे सफाक खंजर चलाते रहे उस हुसैन इब्न हैदर पे लाखों सलाम हुसैन हुसैन पर सलाम
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the audio clip and the break, in the Nasheed break, we were chatting with Mufti Muhammed Hamza Farooqui briefly about the speed in which time is moving. And, we remember Ramadan not long ago, and we into the 14th of Muharram, 1447, and time is flying, and we got to, catch a wake-up call and utilize our time profitably. But I want to chat briefly about what's breaking news. And breaking news is Nshlanjla and Konazi's bombshell, which sees Minister Senzo Mchunu's ANC presidency ambitions crumble. Now, in a dramatic turn of events within South African politics, senior ANC leader and police minister Senzo Mchunu's aspirations for next ANC presidency may have collapsed before it could even take off. This follows explosive allegations made by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner General Nshlanjla Mkhwanazi, who accused Mchunu of serious misconduct, including collusion with criminal elements involving drug trafficking and police killings. Now, it's relevant to note that the anticipation race for ANC's 56th National Elective Conference was expected to be fierce, with Mchunu among the prominent figures allegedly vying for the top position. His campaign had begun to gain traction with posters circulating on social media. However, the landscape shifted dramatically when Mkhwanazi publicly alleged that Mchunu and Deputy National Commissioner Shedrick Sibia had interfered in police operations and were protecting individuals linked to organized crime. Mkhwanazi's revelations have raised significant concerns about the integrity of the South African police services. And indeed, it's creating all kinds of uncertainty in the police force. Now, I'm going to read a statement in response to allegations regarding the minister's alleged association with Mr. Motala and Mr. Magotsi. In response to recent allegations made by Provincial Commissioner Mkhwanazi, and while respecting the President's call for calm, the Minister of Police, Mr. Senzo Mchunu, feels it is important to clarify the following. The Minister has never met Mr. Motala, has never spoken to him, nor has the Minister ever requested or received anything from him. Further, the Minister did, however, initiate a review of SAPS tender awarded to him when suspicions of possible wrongdoing surfaced. It was the same tender which has since been terminated. Furthermore, whilst the Minister knows and has met Mr. Brown Magotsi, he is just a comrade and not an associate of the Minister. The Minister has never requested or received anything from him. So there's been various reactions to these allegations made and various responses. And even, Parliament is responding to it. The Presidency is dealing with the issue, etc. So the story continues. Now, Narend, being, a political analyst, a party head for NICSA, very often during election times, these allegations crop up. And we know the entire, sort of country is fraught with different kinds of allegations over different periods of time. And we very well know that there's been a lot of concerns about our South African police services. Recently, several senior officials have been arrested and charged for different offenses, including those in crime intelligence. Now, we know the public is cutful about the state of crime in this country, and they certainly believe that SAPS is highly corrupt, they're alleging, and most of the police stations, they, sort of not functional to the capacity and the right manner in which you expect police stations to function. Perhaps you're just going to give us a bit of a background about the state of our security in this country from the South African Police Services point of view, our Metro Police, and indeed our crime intelligence from a political perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. I think at the outset, we need to understand that in this world of politics, every day is a different day. They say a week is a lifetime in politics. But with regards to what you alluded to initially, with regards to the 56th elective conference coming up for the African National Congress, obviously a lot of aspirations and ambitions are set. Various candidates will be trying to ply their trade to get the best possible vantage point to be elected as head of the ANC, which effectively leads them to become the head of state. But with regards to these allegations, I think we need to be circumspect at this point, because most of the allegations, counter-allegations, defenses are being played out in the media, in the court of public opinion. And, we need to err on the side of caution and not make judgments at this time. And as a constitutional democracy, even those who have fingers pointed at them have a right to defend themselves. So whilst we all may have opinions that are tinged with various kinds of emotion with regards to the buzzword that has plagued this country for many years, corruption, I think we need to be circumspect. But my take initially when the presser was done by Mhlanhla Mkhwanazi, General Mhlanhla Mkhwanazi, was that these are damning allegations. They go to the very heart of corruption at senior levels, right? And eventually it ends up at the seat or at the table or the desk of the Commander-in-Chief, which is President Cyril Ramaphosa. And that's one of the reasons that motivated me to write a letter. I have been open about my criticism of President Ramaphosa's leadership, especially in taking decisive and instantaneous action when it was necessary. Now, with regards to Mkhwanazi's allegations, which goes down the line and up the line, if we take Senzo Mchunu as our Minister of Police, there's a lot of allegations there that reverberate to comrades surrounding him. As you mentioned, Brown Mokhotsi, Vusi Musi, Katz, Motala. And we must remember, Motala is also fingered in the Tembisa fraud scandal. I mean, he was offered, there was a 360 million rand tender that was cancelled, but he was paid 50 million nonetheless. That does not make sense to anybody. On prima facie evidence would suggest that there's some kind of untoward occurrence there. So in respect of that, all these allegations that have been made by General Mkhwanazi has to be investigated. One of the things that I'm loath that the president must undertake is a commission of inquiry, simply because commissions of inquiry in the past have yielded very little. They've cost billions. A good example is the Zondo Commission. Yet, where are the high-profile people who are supposed to be fingered, taken to court and convicted and locked up? Now, the South African public has been hounded and bounded by all the allegations over the years about corruption, starting from the Zuma era, even before that. But not much has been yielded in terms of actual action taken against it. And that is where we as a South African community are at the moment. Because one of the serious things that have been alleged is an intimation that South Africa could be a mafia state. And by definition, a mafia state is when the law enforcement agencies are controlled by drug and criminal cartels. Now, if that is the case, our constitutional democracy is at stake, because we become not a police state, but an anti-police state. And you asked me the question, what is the state of our South African police services, from grassroots level? We can see that it is a very unstable mechanism of the South African government. Corruption from the Metro Police. I mean, we've had many anecdotes of people being fingered, many police officers being fingered for taking bribes. Now, whether it's low pay or not, one cannot finger that. But it goes up to very senior investigative levels, up to crime intelligence, which is supposed to be the protector of South African society. And the very fact that that foundation is being rocked, and that foundation of law enforcement is being rocked, people are obviously going to ask, so how am I protected?
So what you're saying is that those that are supposed to be investigating are also corrupt.
Yes, and then who investigates the investigator? It's a very complex situation at the moment, and whatever allegations have been made, and the social media is abuzz with all these things in all new mainstream media as well. But I think the outcome of this is what South Africans want, and they want those who are robbing the South African public have to be brought to book, have to be locked up. We cannot have criminals in high positions dictating our lives. That, we're at an election, the officials don't ask themselves to be elected, they ask the people. And as a result, they are answerable to the people. Now, we don't want...
So what you're really pointing out here is that those officials who are involved in protecting the citizens, investigating criminal activity, are being cited as criminals themselves.
Yes, and that is a serious indictment of the South African law enforcement agency. Now that President Ramaphosa is back from the BRICS conference in Brazil, he promised that he will look at the matter. But unlike other matters, this is so serious because it goes to the heart of our protection. And if the police agencies are crumbling and criminal, how do we expect the ordinary South African citizen to be protected?
Now, you brought out an important point, and sorry to interrupt. And we spoke earlier about the timing of this particular allegation or allegations, and those that are cited very close to the ANC elective conference. There's 3 or 4 figures that are vying for that position. There are factions within the ANC, more than 2, maybe 3. There are parties that have left the ANC and formed what we call the EFF and MK. So there's an interested lot of people in this particular political conference, because people are moving from party to party. And here, an individual who is a successor to the previous Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, who was also cited for various other issues. And you mentioned earlier that this particular commissioner, the provincial commissioner, was linked to the Zuma faction back in the day. So about the timing, Narend, what does it speak about our current political situation? The timing in which, like for example, when Pala Pala came out, the timing was just before the national elections. This one is a very important timing as well. And obviously, it's cause for concern, because you mentioned investigations are required, and you also mentioned it takes time to investigate. And by the time the investigation commences, we may be at the door of elections for the presidential of the ANC. And obviously, then the call will be for this particular individual to step down because he's being investigated. Perhaps you want to comment on those issues, Narend?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The ANC has a step-aside policy that if you are fingered in an allegation of a very serious nature, you step aside, which should be employed. But coming back to the issue, we must remember that General Mkunazi was an acting national commissioner under the Zuma regime. And So he's not so, and his credentials are very good. You know, he's not a lackey. He has some background in both academic and policing and stuff like that. So he's got substance behind him. So these allegations, well, I won't say on the doorstep at this moment, but prior to this elective conference coming up, because that's where the next leader of the country is determined in many ways. You will remember the last elective conference with Nkosazana Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa. The disappointment on Jacob Zuma's face when his ex-wife lost that elective conference. Mm-hmm. Now, I can see something like that happening again, because the factions you're talking about is a real thing in politics, and it's no different in the ANC. But there are factions within the police force as well, which we've explained with certain different role players who have got, because each one's got a different motive. Senzom Chunu with regards to the presidency, perhaps, and the national commissioner. So at the end of the day, when we analyze all these factors in terms of the internal politics of the leading political party in the country, it spells disaster if that thing crumbles, if that aspect crumbles, because then it permeates into the general society. And then as a result, we've seen over the years the breakaway with the EFF, the breakaway with the MK party. So the ANC is splitting within itself as it's going along instead of uniting, which is in many ways a good thing, because too much of power corrupts. But in fact, as we've seen, even a little power corrupts as well. So I think we need to be wary of where we are going in this country in terms of how we support the political parties, more especially the leading party in the country, the ANC. Because President Ramaphosa has got a mammoth, he's got a gigantic task ahead of him come the elective conference. Look, he's not going to he can't stand for another term. He served his 2 terms and a bonus.
So he needs to get an ally that probably is going to stand. And in Senzom Chunu, that was the case. But obviously, there could be others that could be linked to him. But in the other factions, there could be candidates that are put forward as well.
Yeah. Paul Mashatile, the deputy president, obviously might have aspirations. And you can't discard that at this point in time, because as the days go by and as this little game plays out, a few people will be shed off that list. And as they are shed off, new aspirants come into play.
Now, in Senzom Chunu, because he's been cited here, and because of his close connections in KZN and Gauteng, that was an area of the Zuma faction. And by him being, one of the candidates for presidency, it goes without saying that the other provinces that are pro-Ramaphosa would have given the support if he had a decent support in KZN and Gauteng. So that splits the kind of potential voting, and this is the thinking of some of these different factions.
Yeah, definitely, and that will play out at the elective conference. Senzom Chunu was at one stage the premier of KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes.
So, taking all these factors into consideration, taking their role playing in this new set of allegations, and believe me, these are damning, explosive allegations, because firstly, they lead to criminality. They lead to corruption. And Ramaphosa has given his undertaking to fight corruption. I hope he keeps to his word. And that my letter to him clearly states, I as much as I didn't want to do it, but sometimes you got to call a spade a spade. You can't keep on rapping him on the knuckles or patting him on the back for a nice smile. As a leader, especially in South Africa, especially in these times, he has to be decisive. He has to take action like no other time. Because if we leave it, and how long do we continue with commissions of inquiry, task teams and stuff? We need action, we need results, we need removal, we need progress in South African society.
Now, Narend, just to conclude, we got a couple of minutes left and you need to leave. The public will raise the query. Mkonazi is a strong individual in KZN. He's sorted out a lot of criminal activities. He's sort of prosecuted a lot of these high-ranking officials. He's dealing with corruption and apathy in the police force in KZN. Ramaphosa on the one side will have to urgently investigate the matter, and it'll be in his interest if he can bring conclusion before the elective conference. whether Mchunu is prosecuted or found guilty or whatever, knowing that Mchunu is an important ally, he'll have to do it urgently. But in the meanwhile, as in conclusion, do you think that the police force will be in the toes and service delivery from SAPS and Metro Police will be on the increase going forward?
Okay, just on that point, before I come to that, we must remember that Ramaphosa himself can remove Senzo Mchunu on his own. But as you know, with the ANC, the NEC makes the decisions of appointments, and they have a very strong influence on who is appointed to what position. But yes, in terms of service delivery with regards to the South African police services, I'm concerned that this split, these factions that have occurred, and depending on what is going to play out in both in the internal matters and in the public arena, and who the specific characters and role players are to be fingered, that the dynamics can affect ground level policing. And that is my fear, because Ramaphosa is the commander-in-chief. He controls every single law enforcement agency in the country. And if he doesn't wield the big stick, we might be in for troubled times.
So he needs to manage the situation very carefully. On the one side, from a political angle, from the other side is to make sure that SAPS improve their service delivery and continue to deal with criminals.
Absolutely. We have no choice. Our safety, yours and mine, and every other citizen is at stake.
Narend, we run out of time. We have to break for news. We thank you for joining us this evening. I know there's lots more to discuss with you, but time runs out. Next time, we'll invite you for a detailed discussion on the issue. But we wish you everything of the best in your endeavors as a political analyst. We thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, and good evening to the listeners.
Okay. On that note, we'll break for the 9 o'clock news, and inshallah, we'll continue after the news break.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al-Ansar News.
Making news, these are the 9th of July. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Tammy Ntuli backs provincial police chief on his corruption allegation claims. America Monina. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Tammy Ntuli has backed provincial police chief on his corruption allegations claim. The Premier says that he is fully in support of the KwaZulu-Natal police chief, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who alleges that the police minister, Senzo Mchunu, and a host of others within the police service and crime intelligence units are involved in colluding with drug cartels and also disbanding the political killings task team. Mkhwanazi made the expose last weekend. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Tammy Ntuli says Mkhwanazi is a principled police officer.
My observation of the Provincial Commissioner is a principled police and a man of integrity who's committed in leading the fight against a crime. That are my observations since I've in fact worked with him in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Hence, I was commending the work of the police in the province, that they are going an extraordinary a mile to try and ensure that they fight crime in the province. So I will not have any doubt on whatever the Provincial Commissioner will be putting forward as an issue of concern. Hence, I'm saying we are of the view that we have full confidence over the President of the Republic to handle the matters that were raised quite in a proper way.
Still with that story, the National Assembly Speaker, Cheko Didiza, has assigned 3 committees to investigate the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's explosive allegations. The 3 committees include portfolio committees of Police Justice and Constitutional Departments, and also the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. Moloto Matapo, is Parliament spokesperson, is wading in.
The Speaker of the National Assembly does take those allegations made by General Mkhwanazi very seriously, and indeed believes that there is a role of Parliament to play in this matter in terms of oversight. She appreciates greatly the statement of the president and his commitment that he will look into these matters seriously when he returns from BRICS in Brazil. In the interim, in the light of the applications that have been received by the Speaker of the National Assembly from the two political parties, as well as the Portfolio Committee Chairperson, the Committee on Police, the Speaker has his overview that in the interim, at this moment, it is not the appropriate time given the scarcity of information and factual information with regard to this matter. She believes that this is a matter of oversight, and she has directed 3 committees of Parliament.
More news: a new health study has revealed a worrying rise in serious illnesses linked to obesity among South African children, some as young as 5. Researchers say urgent action must be taken to avoid long-term health consequences. More children in South Africa are now being diagnosed with conditions typically seen in adults, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol. This is according to a decade-long study by the South African Medical Research Council and Durban's Nkosi Albert Lutuli Central Hospital. Researchers assessed over 400 obese children between 2012 and 2022. They found nearly half had hypertension, while others showed early signs of type 2 diabetes. Experts blame unhealthy diets, sugary drinks, excessive screen time, and a lack of physical activity. One of the study's authors has described the findings as a red flag, warning that urgent lifestyle changes are needed to avoid a future health crisis. And finally, international story: a group of 100 Muslim scholars and intellectuals from across the world have issued a statement declaring U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as enemies waging war against God. They also declared their full and unwavering support for the wise and resolute leadership of the Ayatollah Sayyidi Ali Khamenei as guide awakening the Islamic Ummah and the standard bearer of the Islamic Dignity Front, with prudence, courage, and wisdom leading the path of honor, resistance, and the unity of Islamic nation. Report says that their statement come in the wake of insulting statement by Trump and Netanyahu entertaining the idea of assassinating Ayatollah Khamenei. Report says there is signatories, and the signatories against Trump and Netanyahu's statement include the Shia and the Sunni scholars from Iraq, Turkey, Palestine, Pakistan, Oman, Russia, Bangladesh, Lebanon, Tunisia, Bahrain, and a host of others. In your weather, it's at 24 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Tamin Tuli says he's back in the provincial police, Klansham Kanazi, following his expose on political reports on political killings and drug cartels. That's the news.
Join us for an inspiring meet and greet, calling all young book lovers and aspiring authors. Meet Hannah Motala and Maria Meta, 2 talented young authors who are making waves. Join us at Al-Ansar Shop on the 12th of July for an exciting meet and greet event where you can learn about their writing journey and experiences. The date again, Saturday, the 12th of July, time 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Location is at the Al-Ansar Shop, 207 West Road in Overport. Don't miss this opportunity to meet inspiring authors and spark your creativity. We look forward to seeing you there.
Gaza needs your support more than ever. Homes have been shattered and families have lost everything. With your support, our teams are delivering clean water tankers, feeding the hungry, and assisting orphans who have no one left. Let us give Gaza whatever help we can. African Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Explore the world with Worldview Travel. Let our expert team guide you in creating a travel experience that exceeds your expectations. Unbeatable flight deals, corporate and leisure bookings, luxurious accommodations, tailor-made packages, reliable car rentals, comprehensive travel insurance, seamless visa assistance. Visit us at 55 Problem Keys Road, Durban. Call 031-001-7062 or 0718350216. Follow us on Instagram at Worldview Travel. Worldview Travel, creates memories to last a lifetime. Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
Durban's #1 truck stop, Reef Trade, situated at number 9 Joyner Road, Prospecton, offering a 24-hour parking facility on site with diesel wholesale and mobile distribution for vehicles, generators, plant and machinery to your door, safe parking, truck wash, container handling, restroom facilities, and more. Call us on 083 449 1563 or 083 978 6410 for a free quotation. Reef Trade, we're here for you.
Plan your dream holiday with the specialist, World of Travel, as we pride ourselves in offering you the best in Hajj and Umrah. We also offer travel packages to the Middle East, Far East, and many more exotic destinations. Call our professional travel consultants now on 031 20 8877 or view our website www.worldoftravel.co.za. Visit us at 44 Crescent Street as memorable journeys begin with World of Travel by Irshad Malik.
School's out. Let's get this holiday started. Calling all kids and kids at heart. Al-Ansar Delhi is excited to announce a fun-filled holiday meal just for you. Enjoy delicious treats special this holiday. Hot dogs, 25 Rand. Burgers, just 25 Rand. Don't miss out on the fun. Visit us during your school holidays and indulge in these tasty treats. Perfect for a quick bite or a special treat. Contact the Al-Ansar Delhi on 031 208 1601.
We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Al-Ansar.
How did the most powerful and wealthy Muslim countries become silent, even obedient, puppets of the very powers that harm Muslims the most? Let's break it down with historical facts.
Allah, 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 Allah.
Radio Al-Ansar.
तन्हा हूँ मैं और इम्तिहा लाखों तने हैं सामने बैठा हूँ मैं मायूस कुन आए ना कोई मुझे थामने अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير मायूब हूँ तेरा करम करता रखा इज्जत भी दी बढ़ के दिया औकात से दौलत भी ताकत भी और वक्त भी कर दे खता हर माफ तू फहरिस्त इसियां को छोड़ दे अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير रंगीनियों खुद गर्जियों में है गुजारी ये उम्र
है आरज़ू बस एक यही कर दूं तेरे नाम शामो सहर तस्कीन दिल हासिल करूं रुख अपनी जानिब तू मोड़ दे अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير लब पे रहे जिक्र दुआ और तुझसे मैं डरता रहूं करके अमल कुरान पे जन्नत की राहों पे चलता रहूं खिदमत करूं इस्लाम की पछतावे का गम तोड़ दे अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير रोता रहा सजदों में जो दिल में लिए उम्मत का गम पढ़ता रहूं मैं तो फतन अपने नबी पे दुरूद हर कदम हो रूह जब
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we were chatting with Narend, Ganesh on the situation of the allegations of corruption with the South African police services and the implications of the allegations made by General Mkhwanazi, and the response from Senzo Mchunu and some of the political implications of what was being reported. And in conclusion, Narend mentioned that he's hoping that service delivery in the police force improves, given the fact that allegations are being, unbundled, and the president has got a role to play, and he, as the commander-in-chief, needs to ensure that there's an improvement in service delivery in the police force leading up to the elections. I want to continue our discussions with Mufti Muhammed Hamza Farooqui, and one of the topics for this evening was there's global tensions, and from an Islamic perspective, how do we respond? And we know that we are aware that the war, Israel and Palestinians in Gaza, is reaching, heavy proportions, and since October 2023. There's been, genocide taking place in Gaza. Recently, there's been this Iran-Israel conflict, and we know that on both sides, there's been a lot of missiles being fired, and fortunately, there was a ceasefire, sort of emanated, supported by USA. USA did get involved, but they had to back out. And then there's also unrest in places like Kashmir, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and various other countries. And then generally, the clip I played, the Middle Eastern countries that are Muslim by nature have been quite silent, and they've been actually making available their airspaces for Israel to use that as a platform to fire missiles. And the concern that's expressed is that the Muslim countries are not supporting, the Muslims who are being persecuted. What is their game plan? Are they really materialistically inclined? If we go back to the time of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam and the various battles that took place, the Battle of Badr, the Battle of Yarmouk, and various other battles, we know that Sahaba Ikram were small in number compared to the opposition, but because of their steadfastness to the commandments of Allah and the Sunnah of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah's help came and they were successful in many a battle. And we know from the time of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, the stories of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, Musa alayhi salam. He was brought up in Pharaoh's home, and obviously the time came when, you know, he was pushed to the Red Sea and the army of Pharaoh was behind him. He turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah opened up pathways for him and his followers to go through, and Pharaoh was terminated at that instant. So the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came and will always come. Mufti Sahib, before the break we were chatting to you about how time is flying and the amals that we should be performing and how steadfast we should be from a dini angle. Now, from an Islamic perspective, a lot of our individuals or listeners are confused as to what to do. We have various groupings doing various things, protest marches, banning of products from Israel, also massive protest marches. That's their way. And there is a hadith to the effect that when a oppression takes place or some kind of wrongdoing take place, there's one of three things that one does in that situation. Either you stop it by yourselves, you take action. The second form of iman, or the level of iman, is that you talk about it, you oppose it, and the least or the lowest form is to make du'as. Now, in South Africa, we are far from what's happening in other parts of the world. We're fortunate, we may say that, but we have a lot of Darul Ulooms and very strong ulama bodies in South Africa, and we try our level best to be steadfast. So from an Islamic perspective, how do we react and respond to these global tensions that are just spoken about, and many more that we may be aware of? What is up?
So these are, of course, as interpreted by most of the scholars and ulama, and what we're seeing, as we discussed also, with how quickly and how fast, Qiyamah is coming. So amongst these signs of Qiyamah, a narration of Sahih Muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, والذي نفسي بيده لا يأتين على الناس زمان لا يدري القاتل في أي شيء قتل ولا يدري المقتول على أي شيء قتل. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is taking an oath in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in his life that by the oath of that being in whose hand my life is, a time will come in the ummah that a person will go and kill, but he has no reason to kill. And a person would be killed, assassinated, but he doesn't have, he doesn't know why he was killed. And that is exactly what is happening in the Middle East, in Kashmir, etc., where, there's all these genocides, killings, and atrocities that are unfolding across the Muslim ummah at large. So, being one of the greatest, stepping stones and signs towards Qiyamah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaks about it in another hadith and refers to it as al-haraj. That as closer we get to Qiyamah, there will be a lot of haraj. Sahaba radiyallahu anhum asked, what is this haraj that you're referring to, Ya Rasulullah? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam quoted a similar narration where he mentioned that I am referring to as killing. So the killing that we are seeing, the fighting and the wars that's going on, the oppression that's going on, and especially those mothers, babies who are being killed for no reason, and they do not know why they're being killed. So this is exactly, a reflection of this saying and words and hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is unfolding before our eyes. And specifically, of course, referring to the oppression of Israel to the Muslim Ummah in Palestine and Gaza. They will always be the enemies of the Muslims. They will always have hatred for the Muslims no matter what. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about it clearly in the Quran that لَتَجِدَنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودِ وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. That the Yahud, the Jews, the Zionists, they are going to be the worst, and they will have the most hatred for the Muslims when it comes to warfare and enemies, etc. So they will be the worst in that case, and they will have the most hatred for the Muslims. So when a person, of course, has hatred, he will never ever look for any sort of goodness or prosperity as far as a Muslim is concerned, and he will make sure to use any form of treachery and oppression to downgrade, so to say, who he sees as his threat and his enemy. And therefore these atrocities and oppression unfolding in the Middle East from various countries. And rightfully so, also the hadith that we referred to, where you mentioned about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaking at what level can we as Muslims speak out or act in terms of how far we are or where we are, in order to be part of stopping these atrocities or doing something about it. So من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. Also a narration in Sahih Muslim, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, when you see some sort of oppression, some sort of disobedience, some sort of vice, then you can physically stop it if you have the ability to do so. And if you cannot physically do it, then use your tongue and speak out against it, right against it, when you know that rightfully this is what I'm supposed to do, especially when it comes to matters of being a Muslim or humanity's sake, etc. And the least we can do is at least feel the pain of the ummah by having some sort of sorrow in our hearts and intention in our hearts, make dua for them. So either physically we do it, either verbally and through our writings, or the most weak state or stage that we can be at is that we should feel the pain within our hearts and make at least some sort of intention or dua for those that are being oppressed, especially the Palestinians and the Muslims across these areas where the genocide and war is unfolding.
Mufti Sahib, it comes in a hadith further, the meaning of which is that when the body encounters a pain, in any area, the entire body feels the pain. The Muslim Ummah is going through pareshan worldwide. On the one side, you've got Muslim leaders unconcerned because of the materialistic aspects. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam is reported to have said that the world and its contents is not even equivalent to the wing of a mosquito, which means that our focus should be to utilize this world as a means of attaining success for the hereafter. That does not mean that we should not live in this world, but don't focus on amassing wealth at the expense of your akhirat. Now, in the light of what I've said, it is very important that our listeners out there have to bring this situation in its correct perspective in the way we react. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam has spelled out, how we should conduct ourselves in all situations. So what is your advice as a closing remark to our listeners out there, that in the circumstances, what amals do we make to ensure that we also feeling the emotions and the problems of our ummah out there, and how do we really make du'as and amals to assist the ummah, whether we give charity, whether we keep up with our ibadat, and make sure when we lift our hands in dua, du'as are accepted. Because if our amals are not right and we're making dua, then it's questionable, what kind of dua we're making. Mufti Sahib?
Yeah, so the most important aspect in that light is that we as Muslims need to catch a wake up as far as our salah is concerned. We speak about masajid, we speak about salah, we speak about the great virtues of salah. Our salah needs to first of all come in order as a Muslim ummah, and that stems from every head in the household, parents, grandparents, children, or whatever level we are at, ulama, sort of influential people within organizations or wherever it may be. Salah has to be a priority, and we need to fill our masajid at the time of Fajr, how we are filling them at the time of Jumu'ah and Eid, etc. So when our salah will come in order, that is, the basic fara'id that is compulsory upon us as Muslims, that needs to definitely come, in play, and we need to ensure that salah is our number one priority. On the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing that He's going to ask us as far as huququllah is concerned is our salah. If our salah is in order, everything else thereafter unfolding will be in order. So the ulama mentioned that in this life, if we want a life of peace and prosperity, if our salah in this life is in order, our lives will be in order. And the lives of course, those that are around us, our community, etc. So Islam and the Muslim community is like a building block that creates a building of Islam, and each person is a block of that building where you need to fit yourself as a true Muslim and make the ummah solid and strong, as you would have placed each brick precisely, ensuring that this ummah doesn't fall. Now, the main reason for the ummah falling is that we are not fulfilling these rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are not fulfilling the rights of those that are around us, hence creating cracks and holes in the building, causing the ummah to crash. So if we, most important, the piece of advice that I would leave the listeners with tonight is, let us ensure that our salah is in order. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is leaving this world, and what are, part of the last advices that he is enumerating and giving out at the time, as-salah, as-salah wa ma malakat aymanukum. He is speaking about salah. Ensure that salah is in order, and take care of those that are under you. So huququllah, huququl ibad, if this comes into order, then we will see change in our lives and the lives of the Muslims across the globe as well. So every person's responsibility, and that should start from yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not, bring changes to a person, to a community, to a society, a group of people, until and unless they themselves, through their own will, are going to make the change. Again, referring to the senior scholar of hadith in Darul Ulum, Zakaria Mullah Sulaiman Choksi, hafidhahullah ta'ala, when he was asked about the fitna of the cell phone and how we as Muslims can stay away from this fitna and this trial that has come along in terms of our time that we also spoke about. So he said the first thing that you need to do is irada. You need to have a sincere willpower and intention that I want to change and stay away from this fitna that has gripped the entire human popularity, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. So the first thing is the willpower and the sincere intention to do so, and then of course try to keep the cell phone as far away from you as possible. So these two aspects I leave the listeners with. Number one, bring into your life sincere willpower and intention to change and bring good into your life, staying away from the fitna of social media, the trials of social media, cell phones, etc. And number two, like we mentioned and emphasized on salah, that our huququllah should be in order and huququl ibad must be in order as well. This will create goodness in our lives, in our families, in our communities, and inshallah trickle through across the globe.
Shukran, Mufti Sahab. I think Mufti Sahab emphasized, from an Islamic perspective, how do we react to the global tensions that are taking place, and also the advices that if your salah is right, automatically your character will change and other amals that you perform will be in line with Sharia. And inshallah, when one lifts one's hand up in dua, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts and changes takes place. Mufti Sahab, Jazakallah for joining us. Valuable times, imparting very important information. Certainly in the future we will invite you to give us more nasihah on other aspects. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the advices you've given us.
Ameen.
And may you continue from strength to strength as one of the key individuals in Jamaitul Ulama KwaZulu-Natal, giving us advices on various aspects. Mufti Sahab indeed is also part of the Al-Ansar Foundation. He gives us advices on Sharia aspects, and he deals with all our Sharia issues in Al-Ansar Foundation. We're fortunate to have him. Mufti Sahab, shukran for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ameen wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
On that note, we'll take a short break, and inshallah after the break, we'll chat with our asset manager, economist, Hassan Motala, who will give us some insight into the impact of these tariff adjustments that Donald Trump has imposed on South Africa, recently.
إنك ترى ما نزل بنا في غزة من الأحوال يا ذا الجلال والعزة يا ذا الجبروت والعزة اللهم أعز أهل غزة اللهم فرج عن أهل غزة اللهم فرح أهل غزة اللهم انصر أهل غزة اللهم داو جريحهم اللهم اشف مريضهم اللهم اقبل شهيدهم اللهم ارحم ميتهم اللهم كفف جراحاتهم وبرد آلامهم اللهم واجعل لهم وللمسلمين فرجا قريبا يا الله اللهم فرج عنا وعن المسلمين في كل مكان اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين واخذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداء الدين يا رب العالمين سبحانك سبحانك ترى الظالمين فتمهلهم حتى يظنوا أنك تهملهم وتبتلي الصالحين في الدنيا حتى يستيئسوا فإن استيئسوا أتيتهم بنصرهم اللهم إنك تعلم أن جراحات المسلمين كثيرة وآلامهم كثيرة في كل مكان وفي كل زمان اللهم فانصرنا على أعدائنا يا الله اللهم فثبت أقدامنا يا الله.
You know what really gets under my skin? When my cake or icing just doesn't come out right. It's such a bummer. But I found this incredible margarine called Wooden Spoon, and it's been a total lifesaver for my baking adventures. It makes my icing turn out just perfect every time. When I whip up something with Wooden Spoon, I feel like a master baker. Seriously, my cakes have never looked better. The secret? Wooden Spoon margarine. It's like the magic ingredient for nailing those perfect bakes. And guess what? It's even endorsed by the South African Bakers Guild Association. Just another quality product from the Willowton Group.
Ladies, are you or a loved one diagnosed with cancer? Or are you on treatment? Or are you a cancer survivor? Then the Al-Ansar Cancer Support Group is for you. Join us once a month and be a part of a supportive group of ladies to simply chat, discuss challenges, and be motivated by our guest speakers. Contact Rubina Parak on 082-786-8815 or Zora Jadwat on 082-220-3131 for more information. No one should face cancer alone.
Radio Al-Ansar, 24/7, 365.
Ya Rasool Allah, Ya Habib Allah, Aka, 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 Aka. آقا 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 پھر کے گلی گلی تباہ ہو گئے صبر کی کھائے کیوں دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں رخصت قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں رخصت قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں کوئی ہمیں جگائے کیوں پھر کے دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں یاد حضور کی قسم غفلت عیش ہے ستم یاد दे हुजूर की कसम गफलत ऐश है सितम खूब है कैद गम में हम खूब है कैद गम में हम कोई हमें छुड़ाए क्यों वो जो न थे तो कुछ न था वो जो न हो तो कुछ न हो वो जो न थे तो कुछ न था वो जो न हो तो कुछ न हो जान है वो जहान की जान है वो जहान की जान है तो जहान है आका की खाए क्यों दिल को जो अक्ल दे खुदा तेरी गली से जाए क्यों हाँ जान है इश्क मुस्तफा रोज फजू करे खुदा जान है इश्क मुस्तफा रोज फजू करे खुदा जिसको दर्द का मजा जिसको दर्द का मजा सांसे दवा उठाए क्यों.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Ansar International, broadcasting on frequency W90.4 FM, Peter Mansberg 105.6 FM, streaming on www.alansar.org.za. We had a very informative discussion with both Narend Singh as well as Mufti Muhammad Farooqui, covering the South African police services with allegations by Mkonazi and also global tensions, the way we should react, in the Nasiha by Mufti Sap. Alhamdulillah, I hope our listeners benefited. We will continue our discussions on the third topic for this evening, which is the impact of tariff adjustments imposed by USA. We recall that these tariffs were suggested some 90 days ago, and obviously our president went out there and met with Donald Trump, the president of USA, and obviously there were suspensions for 90 days worldwide until USA can look at these tariffs. On the July the 7th, 2025, a letter was drafted by Donald Trump to the president of South Africa, where he imposed 30% tariffs on certain products. Obviously, our economists are saying that these are sweeping tariffs on South African imports, with the exception of cars, 25% steel and aluminium, 50% platinum, group metals, platinum, and various other metals. All imports will attract a 30% tariff, which means that it'll exclude certain minerals. But this includes agricultural products, which will severely impact on certain farmers. Now, the tariffs imposed on fruit specifically seem to be counterintuitive, as our fruit production is not in sync with that of the United States because of the different climatic conditions. Therefore, fruit in the USA is not ripe at the time when we export to the United States, and consequently, we do not compete with American farmers on these products. In the agriculture sector, we do compete against Chile and Peru. If lower tariffs are implemented for Chile and Peru, it will provide them with a massive competitive advantage since importing from South Africa would be more expensive. The question that a lot of economists are asking, what is the purpose of these duties? The United States indicates that it is to reduce the trade deficit that it has with South Africa and is based on duties currently applicable on imports from the United States. South Africa disputes this, stating that the duty calculation is based on incorrect data. Now, there is an assumption that's taking place here that the United States is utilizing duties as a negotiating mechanism and that the issues up for negotiation are not only in the area of trade, but may well include broader political issues. And we know very well that in negotiations with the United States, South Africa's relationship with adversaries of United States, China, Russia, and Iran may come to the fore. The case instituted by South Africa against Israel will remain a contentious issue, which is the ICJ matter. The race-based transformation agenda of the ANC also stands in the way of normalization of trade with the United States. The ANC will not concede on any of these issues, making it highly unlikely that an alternative trade deal will be concluded. So there is also a possibility of a further 10% duty on all countries aligning themselves with BRICS. So in the light of these issues, we noted that in recent days, the markets haven't reacted negatively, in that the Rand is stable around the 1780 range to 1790. I know in the last announcement, the Rand jumped by almost 1 Rand 50 to about 1890 to 19 Rand. The JSE plummeted to a considerable extent, but it's stable. In fact, it's, at its high levels around 97,000. So the markets haven't reacted negatively to this announcement. Hassan, I'd like to welcome you on News in Focus this evening. And from a financial perspective, why has the reaction not been as negative as it was in the past?
Sure. To you, and good evening also to all the listeners. Look, there's a couple of things. Firstly, remember when we had that a couple months back when he came out and he brought this fantastic presentation he did, and he had his like a chalkboard, like a placard, and then he was going around and showing each of the countries what the trade deficits were and the like, and therefore this country must get this tariff. It was quite a like a shock and awe type of presentation where he tried to get the sort of the different countries or trading partners worried that he's going to implement it. And he obviously was testing the waters to some extent, but he did say he was going to implement it until there was also some pushback by major trading partners such as China. China was the big one. And China, he went in right up to 145% he was talking about, and then everything simmered back because China decided to also play a bit of hardball because they're big enough and they understood that they needed to be firm in terms of how they can do it. So he basically, since then, he sort of trekked back a bit and he eased off in terms of and he had a 90-day pause. Now we've come to effectively close to the 90-day pause, which is supposed to be 9th, but he's talking about now implementation of tariffs from the 1st of August. He has already to date concluded certain agreements with other countries. So countries like the UK, Vietnam. Now remember, Vietnam is a big exporter of textiles. So a lot of the clothes that we wear, many other things are manufactured in Vietnam. And for example, your iPhones and stuff like that, some of the stuff for components in there is also assembled in Vietnam and exported into the US. So they've already agreed in terms of a trade agreement outside of this year. So there is hope, or there's expectations by the market that between now till the 1st of August, potentially certain trade deals could still be done. And that's what the expectations or the hope is that, if, for example, South Africa, we're getting 30%. He's talked about Malaysia, Malaysia is, I think, 25%, Myanmar is 40%, and there's quite a few. There's a range of, but most of them are anywhere between 25, 30, 40%. That's the range that seems to be in terms of tariffs. South Africa is obviously 30%. So I think the expectations but not only South African markets, but global markets. You haven't seen global markets, the S&P, even the European markets, the UK markets, Asian markets haven't collapsed or faced significant downward pressure as what we had seen in the previous, because there's an expectation or thinking that there will be some level of agreement. So we are thinking that there's going to be higher tariffs, no doubt. So historically, for example, South Africa, we were effectively subjected to 2.5%, by and large, for most of the stuff. There's expectations that South Africa will be more level at about 15%. After some potential trade deal that's done, we'll probably end up around that. While it's higher than what we thought, it'll still be a lot lower than the 30%. So but as we get closer to the time and there's you could see a little bit more volatility in markets on the back of that. Now, how significant an impact will 30% be in terms of our current exports to the US? So to put into perspective, South Africa, of our total exports across the globe, 7% of our total exports goes to the US. What are our big exports? So of that 7%, half of it is minerals and metals. So platinum, gold, coal, those metals. Guess what? All those metals are not subjected to any tariffs. So that's a fantastic relief for us, because half of what we export into the US is not subject to tariffs. So fantastic. So there should be no impact on our mineral exports, because the volume should still remain relatively decent, and our customers in those countries in the US will continue to buy our product. So that's good, and we'll still earn our hard currency here. Now we come to the other half of what we're exporting. Two sectors in particular will be impacted. You highlighted earlier the automotive sector. That definitely will be impacted, because currently a majority of our exports fall under the AGOA agreement, which is the Africa Growth sort of initiative. That is where we're exporting at effectively a 0% tariff. Now, to put a 30% tariff on cars now being exported to the US, it's obviously going to impact us. But guess what? It's not only impacting who are exporting to the US. Companies like Ford, an American company that's based here producing in South Africa, that's exporting back to the US. So not only is it impacting us in terms of our jobs and our economy, but it's also indirectly impacting an American company operating here. So I think sometimes, politicians and whatever don't think through things completely as well. So Trump is trying to say, well, if you don't want no tariffs, just come and take that plant that you got here in South Africa or Vietnam or whatever, set it up, close it there, set it up in the US, we'll have no tariffs for whatever you're producing for the US market. But the problem is to set up, to relocate it. Those things cost a huge amount of money and effort, and it doesn't happen overnight. The other sector, which is a potentially big impact, just on the automotive, the region in particular that will be impacted is your Eastern Cape. They obviously have big plants and the like there. So there is a potential for not only the car manufacturers per se, but the related industry around that. Now, whether you're producing a piston or a leather seat for the car or something like that, all industries around that supply to the automotives will be impacted. So there's potentially thousands of jobs, especially within that region, that could be impacted. The second sector that is potentially has a significant impact is our agricultural sector. Now remember, South Africa is one of the biggest exporters of citrus in the world, only second to Spain. Spain is the largest exporter of oranges and citrus products. South Africa is second in the world. And the US is one of our big export markets, because the US is a huge country, 360 million people. They're big import. They love their orange juice and, they import a lot of citrus both from South Africa and Spain as well. Now, that is potentially impact. And to put it into perspective, regions that will be impacted, Western Cape. Think of citrus dal. Why it's called citrus dal? Citrus dal is a big producer of citrus products. Over the last 25 years, they've been producing significant amount for the export market, with the US being a major target market of them. That will have an impact. So towns could be impacted. But the great thing about fruit is it is a agile. If the producers are agile and they're nimble and they can move, you have some flexibility in terms of moving it to different markets. Can happen. So while the US is a big export market and you will be impacted, South Africa could look for alternatives. India, I mean, I'm dealing with a client of mine that's an exporter of that, and he's talking about recently India's importing substantial increase. Is seeing demand of increase of our fruits into India, or citrus products. He saw recently, even in fact, besides citrus, before the citrus season started, he was seeing things like apples being exported into India. So India, remember, over 1 billion people, big market, and that is a potential avenue.
And potentially is all the other BRICS countries.
And the other big countries, China. Just think about it.
Even the Middle East now.
And the Middle East has historically already, I mean, you walk into, whether it's in Saudi Arabia or the UAE or Qatar, you walk into any of those big supermarkets, the chances of you seeing an orange from Cape to Cape Span orange or seeing a grape from our is a high probability of that. We've been now exporting to those countries for over 20 years. And that'll continue. But we got to put it into perspective. The US is a big export market for our citrus. But as highlighted, I think India and China and those places could take some of that offtake. So yes, there will be an impact.
And President Trump will be mindful of that, because now it will impact on what his people need in his country.
The other thing as well is that seasons. So effectively speaking, our exporters of fruit, especially citrus, do not compete with the American producers. So who are you trying to protect there? They're not. When the Americans are in their off season, that's when we're effectively exporting into their country to give them fruit. So that you could see pushback from the US consumers and they're like saying, or US supermarket chains pushing back, and or your orange juice producers and then pushing back to and saying, President Trump, you know what? We are facing massive shortages of oranges during our off seasons because you have implemented these tariffs. So you could get some pressure from the domestic supermarkets and domestic producers in the US onto it, and could result in a trade deal. So I think there is hope that a trade deal within the next 3 weeks potentially could happen. And you can see the president's office highlighted that they've noted the letter, they've gone through the contents, they don't agree with some of the points noted in that, but they are encouraged to say that not encouraged, they're optimistic to say that they want to reach some agreement, and they will continue to engage with their US counterparts and try and come to some level of agreement over the next couple of weeks. So I think there's some optimism within the markets that some agreement will be reached, and hopefully, inshallah, I think it will be beneficial for especially our country, but all countries globally, that there's some reasonable agreements that come into play with the US.
Well, in conclusion, the economist that was talking about this situation says the ANC will not concede on any of the issues that the US is expecting them to change. So, alternative markets is a possibility. And, even fruit, if you go to the UK, I mean, to buy an apple, it's compared to prices, it's probably 4 times as much.
Correct.
And I'm sure with these tariff increases, it's going to be the local users or local, consumers
will feel the pinch of that.
Feel the pinch.
Exactly.
So maybe he'll have to come to a compromise of sorts, knowing situation. But obviously, he's going to put pressure on South Africa.
Correct.
Particularly on the relationship there with BRICS. And BRICS now, the membership is increasing.
Correct. We are not the same world economy that we were 30 years ago. There's been a change, there's been an evolution that has taken place. You now have massive trading partners in the likes of China, in the likes of India, in the likes of Brazil, Turkey. there's major trading partners. And I think we need to be cognizant of that. While the US still remains the largest, globally largest economy in the world, South Africa's trading partners, Europe is still one of our biggest trading partners. But slowly, I mean, if you look at China, we're exporting a massive amount of our minerals and metals into that country. And slowly but surely, we're exporting more and more other products, be it agricultural and the like, into that country as well. So I think it's a world that is changing, a global economy that is changing. And I think there's a realization by the US that they're no more the top dog that they were 30 years ago, the top superpower. They're trying to stamp the authority and through Trump, trying to do that. But there is now a little bit of pushback. Yes, there will be compromise everywhere. And you'll have to do that's politics, and that's the nature of also economic trade deals and the like. There will be some compromise. But I think what the US initially thinks they will get in terms of just being like a bully I think that's unlikely to happen. And I think we see more and more trade deals over the next couple of weeks being settled by the US and many other countries, which hopefully provides some ease in terms of the global markets. I think the one thing to highlight, which we've been talking about as well, we've had an ease in terms of geopolitics from a war perspective that we saw in the Middle East recently, where we had the Iranian situation. Although Gaza is still under massive bombardment, and every day we're still hearing number of martyrs within Gaza as well. But there is likely potentially he's looking to try and get a deal done within the next week or so as well. But again, the impact potentially on commodities such as oil, I think, is muted at this point in time, because now the likelihood of oil prices shooting up substantially the probability of that has lowered. So I think for us as consumers, while we saw a petrol price increase last week and that impacted our pockets, I think where we see the rand at the moment at below 18 rands and where the current oil prices are, I think we could see potentially a cut in fuel price come the next month if the situation remains where it is currently.
I think, Hassan, an important point that the rand is fairly stable at around 1780, 1790 range. The price of crude has not significantly jumped. The fact that the ceasefires and the Middle East tensions are easing out, we're hoping that we'll have a decrease in petrol. There was a 20-odd cents or 40-odd cents increase. But going forward, it's quite promising. All we got to hope for, and maybe in conclusion, you need to comment, we're running out of time, that, there's all these political tensions that are taking place within South Africa, more so recently, this allegations by Mkonazi about the police force. Elections are coming up, the political elections within the ANC, and the municipal elections are coming up. So going forward, from a South African perspective, how do you foresee the financial setup? Do you think we'll have stability? There's nothing to be concerned about, or what is the sort of forecast going forward?
Sure. We have, barring what we've seen globally and the impact that has in terms of South Africa, and obviously this tariffs impact will have an impact, because not only will it will impact our some of our sectors which we highlighted, there is a related impact in terms of the treasury. So treasury's revenue collections from taxes from some of these sectors could potentially be impacted, and that means then our fiscal deficit could be a little bit higher, our budget deficit will be a little bit higher as well. However, there has been some improvement in terms of sentiment and the like within the South African economy. You have seen slowly some of the domestic sectors have had a relatively decent year over the past year. I'll give you examples, whether it's some of the local manufacturers, you've seen some of the local retailers and the like. They've had some decent results over the past 12, 18 months, and there is slowly some momentum around that there. However, it's still a touch and go. Politics always can play a part. the timing of what we saw of the announcement by General Imkonazi, and then the potential impact that it has in terms of the major ruling party. Then secondly, you've got within the GNU themselves, the DA and South Africa having that argy-bargy because of the firing of the deputy minister from the DA as well. So that's still potentially an issue. So those issues playing out, and where if for example, the DA does decide to move out of the GNU, and within the ANC, that battles tend to sort of flare up, that potentially has an impact on our country. There's a lot of good things going for our country. We must not underestimate it as well. There is investment, there is coming through in certain areas. I mean, I saw an article today, we talked about Club Med. Club Med is talking about now, July 2026, next year's time, they're expecting to open up their resort on the North Coast in KZN. That's a fantastic world-class resort that's opening up in our doorstep. It potentially has a good impact in terms of bringing tourists into KZN and reviving and boosting our economy going forward as well. And you're seeing also other investments by local and foreign companies into our country. So there is some positive, but there are still some sort of dark clouds potentially on the politics front, especially within the GNU, but also within the largest party, the ANC as well. And global politics always plays a part. The major risk at the moment globally in the political front is obviously the tariffs. But I think there is some optimism that risk will sort of ease off in the coming weeks as well.
Thank you, Hassan, as always. I think some very important comments. There's a lot of optimism, but obviously we must not lose sight of the fact that corruption has to be dealt with. The trade deficit has to be addressed urgently. Other areas of concern globally and South Africa's response thereof has to be taken into account. But all in all, I think, our country is well positioned to ensure that, our citizens here benefit from the wealth of minerals we have, the strong agricultural sector, the climate that we have in South Africa. And we must thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is all a barakat of the Dini actions that are taking place in South Africa, the Darul Ulooms that have been developed, the ulama that are being, qualified in South Africa, and the general manner in which our South Africans are responding from a religious perspective to various issues. And I think Mufti Sahab has given some very valuable advice that we have to be mindful of the fact that we have to make certain amals as Muslims for the benefit of our country and indeed mankind. And he gave advice that we should keep up with our 5 times salah, obey Allah's commandments as shown to us by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, keep away from guna and engage in amals that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that note, before I close up today's show, I received a WhatsApp message, an email, where one of the listeners says that Mufti Hamza Farooqui recites one of the most beautiful qiraats. Get him one day to read on Al-Ansar. And I mentioned to Mufti Sahab that we'll get him. And he also recites some beautiful nasheeds as well. And he's quite an accomplished Mufti from Jamaiatul Ulama KwaZulu-Natal. And we're fortunate to have Mufti Sahab, who's providing a support service to the Al-Ansar Foundation as one of our Shari advisors. And he also assists us in various aspects from a Sharia perspective in Al-Ansar. So on that note, that brings us to the end of News in Focus for this evening. We will have a chat once again next week, Wednesday. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.